welcome to BL Context. This is your host Gitanjali Davakar. Cryptocurrencies have been making the headlines lately. In fact, India now has two crypto unicorns. But what is the deal behind these cryptocurrencies? Are these transactions illegal or are they legal? What is the RBI stance with regards to these transactions? To answer some of these questions, we are joined in by IndiaTech.org CEO Ramesh Kailasam. Now, Ramesh Kailasam is also a person with extensive knowledge and experience in the area of governance and policy. He is also actively involved in making several recommendations on the lines of cryptocurrencies. Let's listen to the discussion. So, how about we start with the most fundamental question? How is it that cryptocurrency is something that really doesn't have a very firm framework at large, has become such a talk in the market?
Well, if you look at it, I think one of the fundamental drivers for giving this kind of a value is the perception and the value that people have attributed to it. The fact that it is not infinite but finite, the fact that it has to be mined to unearth it, the fact that the position of it is so structured and so encrypted, and the fact that there are very few people who have it. And of course, more importantly, there's a huge demand supply gap, which propels it up and up and up, making it more volatile. But at the same time, there are sentiments associated with it, which push the market up and down, which to some extent you will not find in one particular current day regulated module. So if you look at a stock today, well, there might be different reasons, but people might say, I moved a bottle of a particular beverage and the stock crashed, is also an example of volatility. But jokes apart, if you look at gold today, the gold has its own value. It goes up and down during seasons. There's a perception and perceived value of gold. I mean, there is a minor gold usage in actual manufacturing, but majority of it is largely because people perceive and give a value to gold. Whether you convert it into an ornament or not, people keep it in bar form. In terms of stocks, it's a piece of paper. In terms of currency, it's a piece of paper. But it is the perception and the value that somebody has given to it that gives it a particular value or denomination or whatever. And crypto is also going in the same logical way. I'm not saying these are comparable, but I'm saying that this particular attribute of giving kind of valuation to a particular item, which could be a currency, which could be an asset, which could be a commodity, whatever name you want to give it. I think that is the direction which it is heading, and which is why the perceived value part comes in there.
When you say perceived value, are you saying that cryptocurrencies are, it's something now people are sort of saying that if assuming that you have a Bitcoin, one Bitcoin could be equal to $100. You mean that's what people have sort of started telling themselves that this is okay? We can actually have transactions in such using such virtual currency, so to speak.
Yeah. So as I said, whether people are perceiving it as a virtual currency or not, or whether countries or governments or regulators are perceiving this as a virtual currency or not, is a completely different thing. What is fundamental is, I say gold. I mean, how did the value for gold come? Right? It evolved over time. I'm not talking about the current markets where governments are watching. I'm talking about how did the perceived value of gold come? How did the perceived value of any other metal come in? In fact, gold doesn't even belong to Earth. I had written a Twitter thread on it that it comes from up in the space. Your asteroids and your meteors bring it along. There is a finite amount of how much kilo of gold is available or how many tons of gold are available currently on Earth. There's also a kind of a World Gold Council estimate where it says if you spread the global gold available, it will be so many square kilometers or so many square meters, which means it's a pretty small area when compared to the entire Earth. Now, how did people start giving value to it? When, as I said, we don't see gold getting used in commercial applications to the way iron or steel is getting used, right?
Yeah.
But still you gave value to it. So I'm saying logically, if you look at it, certain things get value for various reasons. One is being finite or infinite defines it. The demand for it decides it. The demand and supply gap decides it. For example, diamond, for example, I mean, it's just a piece of carbon or a piece of transparent, whatever it is. But the value to it is perceived by a lot of things, right? Because
but he's talking about value, like I mentioned in the introduction, that we now have two crypto unicorns. Now, value or perception, How did this happen? What do you think led to two crypto unicorns?
Well, these unicorns, obviously, I mean, we have to look at the entire ecosystem of crypto, right? There are these Bitcoins, Ethereums, and others of the world. Then there are miners. Then there are people who are trading in it. And then, therefore, you bring it to the marketplace. And these are the marketplaces. I mean, in a sense that these are exchanges. Both the unicorns that have come in are exchanges. There are also products which have been built around some of these, like the ones that you have Polygon, Matic, and others, which have been built around it, which are again an Indian startup which has built it around the Ethereum scheme of things. And that has also been, I mean, that's valued at $13 billion. I mean, that's where it is. But if you look at the two focus points that you asked for specifically, these are exchanges. So, I mean, you already have 3 or 4 large exchanges operating in India, which are Indian founded and set up in India. And of these, 2 have already become unicorns. That's also because that indicates the 2-factor things. I mean, earlier what was happening? People were actually buying and trading in overseas exchanges. And then you have these Indian exchanges which have come. The fact that Indians largely, and this goes back to my example of gold. I mean, probably our parents and their previous generations used to give value to gold. Maybe the millennials, if you ask them and say, I'm going to give you gold, they might say, give me a Bitcoin, right? Because their valuation and their perception has moved towards something of a different kind. Even in the stock markets, if you look at it, they're investing in the new age stocks, like the Zomato stock is an example of that most of the millennials have invested into new age companies that are coming up. So therefore, the new age customer is changing the way they're buying and selling products and services. The new age customer is also looking at products and things of value which are of a different kind, different from how the previous generations have looked at certain traditional goods of value. So therefore, you have a huge attraction for cryptocurrencies being traded by a lot of these people in tier 1, tier 2, and even tier 3 towns who are trading on these exchanges, bringing in more traffic, bringing in more value to these exchanges, which is also making them attract a lot of investments. And that's what has triggered the massive amount of trade, the number of people, the quantum of trade. All of that has actually built value to these. And you've already seen 2 unicorns emerge in the exchange space.
No, but if we look at how safe these transactions are, there aren't any clear-cut regulations per se when it comes to cryptocurrency trading. On what basis has a nation sort of said okay to crypto trading? Is it illegal? Is it legal? What's the deal?
Well, see, if we look at from an unbiased point of view, you have a new class which is available globally, where people are buying and selling globally. And if you look at the holdings, how much of that is exact, I don't know, but certainly it does indicate that you have the US government holding cryptocurrencies. You have the Chinese government holding cryptocurrencies, although Chinese has said the Chinese cannot have cryptocurrencies, but I can have as a government of China. That's what it indicates, which is true to the kind of economy they are. And then you've got large corporations in US and other countries who are holding, like MicroStrategy, like Tesla. These are companies which are holding cryptocurrencies, which means that there is a reason why such large holdings are happening. Apart from that, global retail investors, if people like you and me, would be also probably buying and selling. And that number is increasing in India because people are globally seeing that this is an asset class that is phenomenally risen in value, and therefore is probably a kind of a material that I should own. I mean, I'm using the term material for a lack of it because we have still not defined what it is, whether it's an asset or a commodity or
which brings me back to the original question. Like, nobody knows what it is, and yet you see people going and investing massively globally. Yes, some people have started taking it seriously, and there are probably regulations for the same abroad. As far as India is concerned, that is still a jaded area, don't you think?
Well, as far as India is concerned, from 2013 onwards, RBI has been cautioning investors, saying, look, this is something which is not backed by anyone. This is something which has huge potential risk, and rightly so. As a regulator, they did warn investors about it. In course of time, they went ahead and finally moved for the ban when they realized that a lot of people were dabbling into it, and probably it was putting the legal tender and foreign exchange and a lot of other checks and balances which they had under risk. And therefore, RBI recommended and moved ahead with a ban, which subsequently was challenged in court, and the court struck it down.
Correct.
So right now we are in a situation where there is no roof over this, neither is there any boundary wall. So you have somebody walking around, jumping everybody's boundaries, and there is nothing which is ring fencing this product right now, or this asset class right now. And therefore, is not the case with the rest of it in the country, right? Everything that you think of which you want to invest or which you want to buy or procure is regulated by some law.
Exactly.
Today, you have this particular scenario where you have something which is moving around, which has not been banned. Nobody has prohibited it, not been named in any of the regulations,
Correct.
except for Ministry of Corporate Affairs, which said, okay, maybe if you're a company holding it, please disclose it this year in the financials that was issued for the last year financials, because nothing was, as the ban fell in place. So we are in a situation where there's nothing, no roof, no wall, no door around this product, but exists for everything else that operates in this country. And therefore, leads to a lot of questions. Like, I mean, we are dabbling in it, buying and selling. Maybe we should not be paying taxes on it, on the profit, because
Exactly.
it's not named in the taxation law. Although the tax law is pretty clear, it says the tax is on your income, whether you loot, murder, or whatever. If you declare it, then obviously it is still taxable. But I mean, not everybody will get that. I mean, I've come across a lot of people who keep telling that. I mean, it's not named in any of the regulations, so I'm not bound by it. Which is all the more reason why we should be regulating it, if not banning it. And if this is the way, I mean, it's an asset class. India is also watching other countries. If you notice, there are not many countries which have banned it, and those who have banned it are not the countries you hold them by so-called international best practice example, right? I mean, these are all countries either in the third world or second world or far Middle East and so on.
If we look at the practices again, because Bitcoins or any other type of cryptocurrency essentially can be exchanged across borders through merely, technological know-how. Now, again, this is completely bound by each country's individual jurisdiction, isn't it? So doesn't this complicate the whole game for India's investments, and, an economic growth at large?
Well, I think it's a great question, because if you look at El Salvador, it says, okay, I'm in Bitcoin and all this is legal in my country. If you look at some other country, it says, oh, I treat it as a property. Another country would say, I treat it as an investment class. Somebody would say, I treat it as a commodity. So therefore, the same character of that product is changing in different countries in different
Absolutely.
ways.
Yeah.
And therefore, what is allowed in one country for a trade and a barter or a payment may be different in other countries. And therefore, we are running into that complication, which is why I think it is all the more important. And added to this is the central banks of the world trying to say, okay, looks like our population are leaning towards something digital, and virtual currency is giving the population the kick. So let's also come with a digital currency. I mean, the motivation is largely around that. But having said that, if you look at India, we are already, I mean, in a way, using digital form of payments. Although, I mean, it's not the digital currency, but yeah, I mean, compared to what was El Salvador doing, I mean, they were saying they were earlier playing on dollars because their currency was not great. And now they said, okay, now you will have this equipment or machines through which you can have those transfers happening and all that, handhelds and whatever, which is similar to your UPI of sorts. But I'm saying that, therefore, there is not that kind of a kick for payments. But certainly, yes, it triggers a larger scheme of things where there will be inconsistency globally. And at the same time, it will be different on whether you will allow such a transaction from your borders to another borders, or whether what is legal in another border is illegal in your border. You will have those conflicts happening. And therefore, all the more reason why central banks and FATF and others have to stick together to kind of create a framework. And FATF is coming with guidances in this regard. But I mean, those are more on travel rule and how do you go about and so on. But I think as far as acceptance and visibility is concerned, if a country Ukraine has passed a law, Japan has some, Australia has some, US has some, I think there needs to be some bit of consistency that has to evolve among these.
like I said, we have two unicorns in India, two crypto unicorns in India, and the nature of this particular currency keeps changing every time. I mean, in every you cross the border, it's completely something else altogether. And yet we have such a massive presence. So, I mean, the question here is, how is it that the world of startups have sort of embraced this concept of crypto exchanges and have actually made a mark for themselves with sans regulations, but at the same time playing within the legal system? Isn't that a little bit of a, I would say, isn't that puzzling, so to speak?
Well, if you look at all the startups, I mean, startups themselves were a disruption because they were questioning the traditional economy and breaking monopolies as such on many of the goods and services, whether it is retail, whether it is, for that matter, cab hailing, whether it is delivery, and so on, in terms of services. And this was disruption. Then came your gaming and other stuff, which were a bigger disruption. Then came your crypto, which is again another disruption. But if you look at all of these, I mean, in each of these, you do have at least a couple of unicorns or 3 or 4 at most in each sector as such. Some of them are even one today. Crypto has moved faster and already created 2 for us in India. Right? And maybe 3 or 4 in the coming days. We don't know about it. But the bottom line is that if you look at startup by startup, yes, this is an emerging space. But more importantly, crypto as such is an emerging tech globally. People are still figuring out what it is and the use cases of it. And India, as I keep saying, is a fabulous place for all such use cases because we have all the 3 worlds with us, which is the underdeveloped, the developing, and the developed. I mean, we have all 3 layers with us as a country, and therefore is a fabulous ground for experimentation and use cases. Because I mean, we keep using the term jugaad across different things, but I think what it does is it's actually creating use cases for different things, and therefore can be a great game changer for evolving as an economy which has solutions in this space if it evolves well, which can be taken to both the underdeveloped, developing, and developed world. And the 2.0, IT 2.0, as I call it, I mean, IT 1.0 was your IT and ITES services, which happened in the 90s. Then you've got the startups disruption, which we can call it as 2.0. And the crypto thing can become a 3.0 or a 2.1, whichever number we want to give it. Also because an evolving chunk of people who are knowledgeable about the product, are dabbling technologically, are finding out use cases, are embedding it into different solutions of existing products, we can become a product and a service provider for the world. And this holds true even for rest of the professions which will cover this. And I've told this multiple times that you will have crypto journalists coming from India who will be knowledgeable. You will have crypto lawyers, you will have crypto accountants, all of them coming up who can be actually telling the world how to go about doing it, rather than us depending on rest of the world to take certain kinds of value-added services.
But again, we come back to the whole thing of it not having a legal framework. Now, for that to come, what do you think should be the ideal step forward? Because we can't just keep having unicorns and not know how they play the game when there is a lot of stringent laws for every other transaction that you carry out.
Exactly. And which is why we have been, and we did write that white paper and we proposed it to the government of India as well as RBI, where we said, first, I mean, we gave a 5-point framework and a 15-point framework. Right now, we are, as we speak, working out with detailed recommendations on what a KYC should look like, far more stringent than what FATF or RBI or SEBI has put across, what the guidelines should look like in each of those sub areas that we put in across in the 5-point recommendations. So fundamental step is we need to decide what do you want to call this animal first, or what do you want to call this product first.
What do you mean? What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, virtual currency is something RBI is uncomfortable with. Certainly, because if I am RBI and running the legal tender, I might say I don't want to bring another competition which I don't know what it looks like, walks like, talks like, or who it belongs to. So I might give it a status possibly as an asset or a commodity or whatever I can. When I say that, it means looks like that, but I may evolve with my own set of certain specific regulations for this. So the moment we define what this is, and therefore when I hold a crypto or a Bitcoin, what is it I'm holding? Am I holding an asset? Am I holding a commodity? Am I holding a stock? Or am I holding a currency? That clarity is the first step. The moment you give that clarity, the rest of it begins to fall in place because we already have, as you said, well-evolved regulations for the rest of the types. So therefore, I think that's the first step, which they say that, okay, we have decided to look like this, therefore the taxation will happen this way, the GST will apply this way. And then you can start imposing, saying, okay, who can have how much, who can buy how much of LRS regulations will apply, how much of FEMA regulations will apply. All of that begin to fall in place, the limitations fall in place, the controls and checks and balances begin to fall in place. Although you might still say, okay, but it can escape this way. But at least let me start closing the 9 out of the 10 ways in which you are currently escaping, right? I mean, let's not have 10 out of 10 all the doors open. Let's start ring fencing it. For that, we need to define who you are and get your roof and wall in place.
So you can't just say that, okay, today it's virtual currency, tomorrow it's something else. And do you think that this sense of ambiguity could be the reason why, we actually managed to have 2 crypto unicorns so far? Because there really isn't anything to bind these companies by after a while. There's no
I wouldn't say that is the reason why. In fact, to the credit of the industry has self-evolved and put checks and balances in place.
Okay.
In fact, today you have exchanges screaming and saying, look, I am detecting suspicious transactions. I am shutting those transactions down. I want a place to report this to. You have the financial investigation unit of Ministry of Finance, but it doesn't have, if you go to the FinNet list of items, scroll down, you don't find the names of any of these exchanges or anything of that sort. People are screaming and saying, regulate me. Give me those regulations, arm me so that I can work legitimately in this part of the world, and I can also feed you with stuff which will help you maintain better controls.
Correct.
I think the industry, to its credit, has started behaving very responsibly and has been proposing stuff. We propose stuff based on the recommendations of the industry. There are other industry associations who have equally been telling the same. And I think, therefore, it has been the other way around, where the people are saying, give us regulation. This is what we want us to be regulated on. This is where we see the lacuna. This is where we suggest you should fix it. And I think now it's for the government to come forward.
So for the benefit of our viewers and our listeners as well, IndiaTech.org does a lot of work in the area of internet, for, as you say in your website, is you're like the voice for the current day internet, so to speak. And do you think that such transactions, or let's say new technologies such as cryptocurrency, is going to only get more competitive or complicated as the internet continues to evolve?
Well, anything, as I said, the disruption brought in by the startups. Today, the startups are riding on the internet. You take the internet away, their business models don't exist, right? I mean, everything today you do right from your homes post the pandemic is also internet driven. Whether you're ordering food, whether you're hailing a cab, whether you're booking a ticket, or you are even playing a game, everything is on the internet. So therefore, what we are representing is this new age tech economies, which are using internet as a medium to create these new business models, which are actually connecting the buyer and traditional buyer and the seller in a far more aggressive manner, in a far more transparent manner, in a far more connected manner. And therefore, it is also appealing to the new age customer who doesn't want to spend time standing in queues and going into the marketplaces, right? I mean, that's the evolution that is happening, and therefore these businesses are emerging because they recognize this evolution taking place. And therefore, we represent all of that spectrum. And therefore, when these businesses come in, the first thing across the globe, I'm not saying India alone, the first fundamental problem that every regulator faces is the fact that, okay, what is this new thing that has got created? I'm known to regulating this traditional kind because I know how they work. But this one completely questions and puzzles me out from my regulation perspective. So the easiest way out for them was to say, okay, you also start behaving like those, and I'll put the same laws of them on you. But then that didn't go well because that led to a lot of friction. And therefore, regulators are now re-looking, engaging with the industry to understand, okay, tell me your business model, let me create something good. And that is an evolution which even crypto will undergo.
But this is sort of a confusing area because you don't know if it comes under finance laws versus, or does it come under let's say the IT Act, because it's a combination of both. So if you have to regulate it, question is who takes responsibility for what?
No, this will come under multiple acts. That's what we have recommended. So if you see, there is an IT Act where there are tech-related regulations that apply. If you behave like an exchange and therefore you may want to be regulated under SEBI or some other facility, let's assume, for example, under Gift City, we say that, okay, we are creating this mechanism because these are new age businesses and therefore house here and we'll regulate you in a different manner. I mean, this is more an example. I'm not promoting Gift City here, but I mean, that's one way of doing it. The second way of doing it is to say, okay, there are Ministry of Corporate Affairs. What if companies hold it? How does corporate laws apply to them? Taxation, all pervasive, individual, Hindu, undivided family, to all the 5 different kind of body corporate, association of individuals. Anybody who holds crypto, how are they regulated, have to be defined under the IT Act. Then apart from that, if there are any tech related issues, then do certain and the likes of MeitY come into picture. So there are multiple such acts which apply to this depending on FEMA regulations. RBI obviously has to get in. RBI will also come into a lot of LRS related issues where buying and selling is happening and so on, if there is foreign currency involved and so on. Banks will be subjected to regulations depending on how to monitor and control your monies that are being used. So there are multiple players involved, and which is why we have been also saying that there needs to be an interministerial, interregulator group which has to sit and say, okay, once you define and tell us this is what you have named this animal as or this product as, these are our existing regulations that will start applying to this. Let's tweak it to see for crypto related what other special tweaks or words we may need to add to the existing regulation, and therefore combinedly kind of regulate.
But is India a little late to jump on the bandwagon in this case?
I would say there is nothing late in this, for the simple reason that you can always leapfrog in regulations, because other countries have dabbled and they've come up with their regulations. If I start looking at what Ukraine has done, what El Salvador has done, what US has done, or Australia and Japan and Korea have done, I'm just taking that and applying and looking at my existing regulations, and I can probably come out with a much better job now than probably if I had done it a year. And you also have the FATF guidances which are now available.
But we'll also need some sort of regulation at a global level as well, something where everybody is on the same page to a large extent.
I would say this is a continuous process, because I mean, nobody knows, both the holder and the miner and the operator, everybody is catching one portion of the thing. Nobody knows what this elephant looks like, right? Everybody would say this is a trunk or a rope or whatever it is. So therefore, I would say that let them, I mean, right now they have reached a conclusion that this is some kind of an animal. Let them now evolve and say, okay, this is what it eats, this is what it looks like, walks like. So this is how the fence should be, and this is how the roof should be.